our second session of the day, discussing the economics and politics of welfarism, we have Professor Anand Ranganathan, scientist, Special Center for Molecular Medicine, JNU, author and political commentator. Professor Shamika Ravi, economist, member, Economic Advisory Committee to PM. In conversation with Amal Sood.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today for this very intriguing discussion. Very relevant today. We have with us Shamika ji. Good evening to you. And we have Anand ji with us. So these, I don't want to call them celebrities, are very, very erudite individuals who have helped address a lot of the narrative that we heard about a little while ago, both about India and how the narrative about India must change and evolve as we go forward. Today, we will try and delve a little bit more on a specific topic which is close to both their hearts. Shamika ji being very involved in this area as an economic advisor as part of the Economic Advisory Committee to the Prime Minister. And Anand ji very much involved in this as a political commentator, not taking sides, but finding fault and poking holes in the discourse that comes through. So good evening to both of you and welcome to the Pondy Lit Fest. The economic and political politics of welfarism addresses a spectrum, a very vast spectrum. And I know the word spectrum these days means a lot of things. But nevertheless, a part of this spectrum is starting on one hand from a safety net for the people of the country. It goes through probably an area of subsidies and associated elements, and then goes into aid or freebies, as we may call it, right? So the spectrum is quite vast. So my first question to Shamika ji, in your capacity as an advisor, how do you look at welfarism? Because that is a core part of the government's activity. How do you look at it, and what are the areas that for you are the most critical? I know it's a vast topic, but if you can succinctly, brief our audience on what you think are the key areas of focus.
So, namaskar, good evening, everyone. What a simple question. And you're right, the answer has to address this wide spectrum, but I think the main confusion which is at the top of our head is what do you consider a freebie and what is really welfare? Meaning, what is well thought out and what is really an instrument of electoral politics? I've got to announce it, no matter whether I actually do it, implement it, or I renege on it. We have seen parties do it, state governments, and so on. I think the philosophy within the government, as far as welfare is broadly concerned, is, and you've heard the Prime Minister talk about saturation. We are a country still under $3,000 per capita per year. You had a question on the GDP just 10 minutes back. So we have a very large number of people who are still, they're out of poverty in terms of basic amenities, but they're really vulnerable economically. So there is a role for the state, right? But the basic amenities which we want a complete saturation, which means we want every Indian, a citizen, to have basic amenities everywhere in the country. And those basic amenities, that basket, of course, over time is expanding, but it has to do with basic amenities like electricity, water supply, piped water, drinking if possible, bank account, mobile telephony, right? So these are very basic. LPG, these are fundamental. Toilets, I mean, it doesn't get more fundamental than that. It's been 10 years of basically evolution of the way we think of what is a basic amenity, which makes the life of an average Indian citizen dignified. So that's why we also talk about dignity, which is not something we measure, but we know that there is no more poverty parade outside government offices, because people, when they're entitled to something, the state is also making that effort to come to you. Which is why, you know, when we say we are saving 1.5% of the GDP, because now the welfare architecture as a whole is far better, I don't want to say implemented, it is far well defined. It's defined, and therefore the implementation of it right from top till the ground level is happening very efficiently, right, as far as these amenities are concerned. But the reality is also that democracy is a game of numbers, and of course elections have to be contested all the time, and political parties want to win. So then when they make announcements which are fundamentally not sustainable, or that will completely bankrupt your state or even the center, then that is a freebie which is troubling. So that's the distinction we make. For instance, you know, Punjab is our only state which has actively been deindustrializing. In fact, today it has almost no industry. And that is because for a very long time, the state of Punjab treated industry as a cash cow to cross-subsidize agriculture. You want to give everything so free for agriculture. The resources were coming from industry, so you kept charging them very high power, etc. But that budget, you know, you will not always have it for eternity. Industry moves, you know, and industry has moved away. Where do they go to? China, Vietnam? No, they're going to Himachal Pradesh. They're going to Haryana. Some have come to Tamil Nadu, etc. So they have lost a lot of what is future growth for most states, which is industry. You saw Himachal Pradesh and the pension problem. I'm always intrigued as an economist, and that to someone who cares about development more than just growth aspect, the growth is the driver. How 5% of well-organized government employees in the state of Himachal made pension the central theme of an election. 95% are not going to be affected by that, but yet it became an agenda. And some say the government came there because of this particular agenda. And then, of course, you can see what is happening to the state fiscal. Same thing is happening with Karnataka. As soon as they got elected, at least there is that much honesty that the deputy CM came out and said, please don't expect any development. We've given you all these freebies. So I think this is a very difficult conversation, but eventually the citizens have to rise and understand. And of course, the role of economists and people like us then is to make this trade-off easily understood. That this is not rocket science. This is what is happening. That every time a freebie of a large magnitude is announced and implemented, it's coming from your future growth, which means you are really taking money from your future generations to indulge today. So that's the basic fundamental philosophical difference between welfare and the way we treat freebie.
No, absolutely so. So thank you for that. And I think, you know, from social security, healthcare, food, financial inclusion, education, women's welfare, you know, the list goes on and on. So Anand, in this whole list of elements that, you know, she kind of gave a very brief overview of, and the political motivations behind each one of them, there are schemes that have been around for a long time, and there are schemes that are coming up as governments come and go at the center and at the state. In your view, have you seen anything that has sustainably brought significant change? And if yes, would you have one or two examples which you think are really foundationally sound?
Thank you, first of all, to Alo and every organizer of the PLF. I always begin whatever I have to say with the fact that I'm always ever invited only once to any event. PLF is an exception, despite Gloria's bell, which is... no, it's absolute joy to come back to the family. Thank you, Alo. And what a wonderful event we're having thus far. And as far as this discussion is concerned, it's a real joy to be sitting next to Shamika. Not very often do I have someone who's got the Prime Minister's ear. So, and when she says it's a very difficult topic to discuss, it is the easiest topics to discuss. And the fact is, the Prime Minister is as responsible or as irresponsible as Arvind Kejriwal or Rahul Gandhi when it comes to freebies. I'll just give you a lot of examples. But what she said, Shamika said, is also very true. You have to draw a line. You have to define exactly what is and what isn't a freebie. And it's not an easy thing to do at all. And I dare say it goes into the realm of abstract, you can say. Politicians love that because there's one thing politicians will never ever define. For them, every freebie is welfare. Now, you see, the thing is, don't get me wrong, I am absolutely for a welfare state. If India wasn't a welfare state, we would have wiped out tens, possibly hundreds of millions of people. And Shamika rightly said it's so important. Just to carry on from what she said, to give you the real emphasis of what has happened. 120 million toilets have been made in the last 10 years. Each new toilet made has saved the household 55,000 rupees in health costs, which is incredible. And Shamika, tweeted a couple of weeks ago, new Nature paper in Nature Journal has come that it has saved how many 100,000 infants over the last, the making of the toilet is just incredible. You have 100 million gas connections, and research has shown that every year 150,000 lives are being saved directly because of Ujjwala scheme. Because household pollution is the biggest infant mortality factor, believe it or not. It's not a disease, but household pollution. So you save there. You have 110 million tap water connections. The under 5 diarrhea deaths have been reduced by half. You have 360 million Ayushman health cards distributed. The population the size of UK has been treated through them. The out-of-pocket expenditure has been slashed by 30%. So, I can go on and on. 600 million bank accounts. You have 430 million mudra loans. Very importantly, 1 billion Indians were vaccinated twice over within a span of a year, which I would say is independent India's greatest achievement. So, welfare is absolutely crucial. The point that is more crucial than that realization is that welfarism is only possible in a capitalist state. Socialism is not possible in a socialist state, right? You have to generate wealth in order for you to distribute it. Not redistribute it as Rahul Gandhi wants, but to distribute it. Now, one of the best things that endeared me to Narendra Modi was in 2013, he said a government has no business to be in business, which has been proven true, through time-tested, not just contemporary history, but you go back hundreds of years, and every nation that's tried to be socialist or communist and take control of enterprise has gone the way of Soviet Union. And yet we have 1,830 public sector units, yet we have 21% of our annual budgetary allocation of 45 lakh crores going to propping up these units. 400 of them are non-functional. That's not just discussion out here. What I'd like to say is, I am for welfare state, but I'm not for freebies. So, have I drawn a line? I have. And I'll tell you what that thing. Anything welfarism which is anti-national is freebie. And welfarism that is pro-national is welfarism, which I like. How do I define it? And I'll give you examples of anti-national welfarism, which is freebism. But before that, I want to, just to kind of concretize this line that I have drawn. For example, Shamika mentioned about free electricity. Is it freebie? I don't think so. I have kind of redrawn that thing, and it's come towards the quadrant of welfarism because of the example that she took. And I took the examples of all the other schemes, they are welfarism. For example, if I were to say that, what if the government decides we are going to put more money into your pocket? Is that freebism? Difficult to say. Possibly not. Because by that analogy, you would say cutting income tax, is that freebism? Now, every person in this audience and millions of Indians, all they want every budget is income tax kata ki nahi kata, They don't think of freebism mila ki nahi mila. When income tax slab is slashed, no one says that's a freebie. By that analogy, you basically giving more money to the family, the household. So why is that not freebie? So let me, without further ado, if I have a couple of minutes, plus 30 seconds, let me give you concrete freebie examples. And they are devastating examples, and I think it's a tragedy. And it is a tragedy that Narendra Modi has not realized this. We are staring down an abyss. There is no escape from it. The first easy freebie to define is when you placate a vote bank, when you do appeasement. For example, every political party promises free pilgrimages to senior citizens if it is elected. Kya chal raha hai? You have Arvind Kejriwal having this senior citizen scheme. We'll take senior citizens free to Dwarka. You have Samajwadi Party Ajmer Sharif le jayenge. You have Congress Party idhar le jayenge, Puri le jayenge. You had BJP promising citizens of Nagaland, if you vote for us, we'll take you free to Jerusalem. Ayodhya dur ki baat hai, Jerusalem le ja rahe the. That is freebie. That's against national interest. That is for your specific vote bank. Appeasing. That's freebie. Number 2, government ads. In the last 10 years, BJP has spent 8,000 crores of taxpayers' money in its government ads that have eulogized its leaders, wished each other happy birthdays with their huge center spread mugs, talked about schemes that have no relation to people who reading the newspaper or watching the channel, wished anniversaries of leaders who passed and gone. This is purely appeasement of the media, and no media ever ran a campaign to stop government ads. In the last 3 years, Kejriwal government, that was castigated by the Delhi High Court for all the Delhi hospitals that it runs, had only 6 CAT scans machines. And one patient died because he could not get the CAT scan. Kejriwal government spent 1,100 crores in the last 3 years. There's been a 4,200% increase in the ad spend of Kejriwal government in the last 10 years. People don't even realize this. Citizens don't realize this. Every time you open a newspaper, you're being bribed. Media is being bribed by the government. The government is saying, if you don't publish the news we want you to publish, or if you publish the news we don't want you to publish, we're going to stop this tap. So that is freebie. Now let me come to the bigger, more dangerous freebies. You touched upon it briefly, which is the old pension scheme. In 2005, celebrated economists, confirmed economists, Montek Singh Ahluwalia and Manmohan Singh, of course they were, they said nation cannot go on like this, we will go bankrupt. 2% of our revenue was going in giving pensions in 1980, today it is 20%. So they came up with the new pension scheme. The old pension scheme was 50% of the last drawn salary, which was not taxable and everything. They said now employee needs to contribute, I think 10% or 14%, and the government will contribute. They changed it. Another celebrated economist in 2022, Rahul Gandhi, said to Himachal, if you vote for me, I will junk the scheme that my own party brought and I will revert to the old pension scheme. There are 1.3 lakh pensioners in Himachal, 1.6 lakh government employees in Himachal. Congress won. And as a result, more than 80%, 77% of Himachal Pradesh's tax revenue is going in funding the old pension scheme. RBI says 5 times more money is required. Montek Singh Ahluwalia went public. He's a congressman. He said, Himachal, this is the biggest revdi, he said, freebie. Himachal will go bankrupt. And right now, the Chief Minister of Himachal has said every MLA is going to forsake 2 months of salary because we are 95,000 crores in debt. Who cares? As a result, you had AAP in Punjab reverting to old pension scheme. Chhattisgarh, which is now under BJP, continues to be under old pension scheme. This is a virus that has caught on. Who is going to hold the can at the end of it? Finally, the biggest freebie of all. And every party is culpable, and this is the most dangerous thing. Nobody has the guts to pell the cat, which is the minimum support price, the MSP, minimum support price. This is the biggest revdi you can think of. This is a Soviet era relic. We needed it at the time when we were producing only 80 million tons of food grains. Right now we produce 321 million tons of food grains. Our storage capacity is only 145 million tons. The government keeps on procuring more and more food grains that it cannot store. That its department FCI is running a debt of 3 lakh crores. We don't have money to build storage godowns. And yet we keep on procuring because we want to placate this vote bank of farmers. We keep on increasing the MSPs. The Congress says give a guarantee for MSP. That's going to cost 16 to 20 lakh crores every year. It's going to make this country bankrupt in the quickest possible time. And yet no one's thought of, junking the MSP. Just about to finish on this. Because this is the most important thing, and no action will dare be taken by the BJP or any other party to completely remove the MSP. Faulty MSP pricing, including faulty produce pricing, there's a ICAIR report. Farmers have lost 45 lakh crores in the last 16 years. 62% of the farmers polled said, we want to set our own price because MSP price is faulty. Nobody wants the MSP, and yet we keep on giving the MSP. Haryana, when Rahul Gandhi said, let's not, let's give the guarantee, MSP guarantee, BJP said it's going to bankrupt. Now, Haryana elections approaching. BJP has done exactly that. It has promised every agricultural produce in Haryana an MSP. Who cares? I talked about 95,000 crores as the debt of Himachal Pradesh. BJP criticized Rahul Gandhi's Khatakat scheme where 1 lakh to every woman. BJP has already implemented a scheme where all eligible Maharashtrian women aged 21 to 60 are being given 1,500 rupees per month. It's costing 55,000 crores to Maharashtra, exchequer. Maharashtra is under a debt of 8 lakh crores. Now the incumbent chief minister has promised, if you vote me to power, I will double it to 3,000 rupees per month. Has anyone criticized it? Has the Prime Minister said this is freebie? No. The states have a cumulative debt of 75 lakh crores. We must understand we are not America that has a debt of $35 trillion. We can't print money. Sooner or later somebody has to pay for it. Who will pay for it?
So that brings us to a very important question, right? In the overall mechanics of working, right? And as we look forward, and this, there is a line. How do you draw the line? How do you enforce the line? How do you ensure that political parties for political gain are limited in some way by what they state, right? So I'll give you a two-part question because Anand, keeps taking his 30 seconds. So the first part is, how do you limit or sustain, and is there a mechanism even possible other than individual goodwill of the leaders of these parties? And the second is with respect to such schemes that are now deprecated, not required anymore, what is the mechanism of getting rid of them and making sure that we move forward rather than pull the chains of the past?
So I have a few things to basically put Anand's point in a larger context, which will help you appreciate the extent of the problem and why certain things exist despite overwhelming evidence. We have MSP for overwhelmingly rice and wheat. Do you know we have abundance? In fact, it's called food production index, meaning of the total amount that you consume, how much do you produce? We are at 123, which means if you consume 100, you're producing 123. So there's a lot of production. Now, what do we do with it? Which is why you are seeing the free food grain policy continue. Now, many people don't understand and they look at it disparagingly, like, despite all this growth, 800 million people are getting food grains. But you know what the outcome of that is, and what is exactly happening is there is a fiscalization of the food basket. You have basically made rice and wheat literally free for a very large segment, let's say 3 quintiles, so 60% of the population. If you look at the latest data, you know what you find? On an average, even your poorest 20% people are consuming 2 kilo lesser cereals per month. So you've had a 25% reduction in actual amount of cereal they are consuming. That's counterintuitive, but you know what they are doing? The saving from cereal is directly getting channeled to 42% increase in fresh fruits. I'm talking about the poorest. 42% increase in fresh fruits, 12% increase in milk and milk product, 44% increase in eggs, fish and meat. You are seeing a revolution at your poorest segment of the society. Is that important? Yes, because it has a direct bearing on anemia. Your food diversity is expanding at your poorest segment and it's directly linked to an health outcome, which is anemia, which we care about a lot. So you have all this food grain, what do you do? Given that you have limited capacity to store. Given that people have actually stopped eating rice and wheat, they want more of everything else. Well, you just keep giving it. You give it because storage is more expensive, distribution efficient, very difficult. You give it and people are basically, we have fiscalized the food plate. That's one way to look at it. The second is on the MSP, and this is where it becomes a bit critical. We'll now have to change agriculture production away from cereal because people want to eat less of that. But you will see political pressure on MSP on other things, right? But there is an alternate thinking, at least some of us in the profession, which is, policy making and economics, meaning empirical. A much better way of supporting farmers is through giving a fixed income, meaning based on your land holding, it is totally dissociated from what you produce. So there's no procurement. You're basically saying the minimum, you will give a certain amount of income which is pegged to your land holding. So you're not distorting the market by saying, I will give you money for wheat, so you will only grow wheat. But I have a millet mission, I basically want you to grow millet, but the MSP is linked to rice and wheat. So there is a distortion inbuilt in the way we are incentivizing farmers. Now US, China, these are the main economies we must even compare ourselves with, because no other economy is so complex and large as these three. Right, Brazil to some extent. These are economies where farmers, they've had similar problem, but they have dissociated production from income support. So now we will have to gradually move towards that. Again, it's not going to be an easy conversation because policy making seldom is being also communicated to people at large to say this is the thinking, this is the future. That is why the hold-up problem that he alluded to happens. Why is it that 84% of your farmers actually supported the farm laws? But when we decided to back off, because, and this is a very important thing to appreciate, a large country so diverse in the current times, I think there is some weightage you have to put to maintaining law and order, to maintaining a certain social order, because, and I'm not saying this that the state is not capable. I think sometimes state capacity is like we could have banned the Kumbh during pandemic, ban the Kumbh. Do you think it was ever going to be feasible to ban the Kumbh? So please be also, realistic about what is your state capacity to do certain things. You saw the cops falling off Red Fort. Bichare wo kya, there is a certain, the state capacity is there, but the way we deal with a lot of these problems cannot be so heavy-handed because it's just not going to get done. Now, when the farm laws didn't go through, many of us were dismayed. Okay, we felt quite bad because 40 years of evidence has told you, ये तो बहुत अच्छा law है. 86% of farmers across the country said, yes, we want it. And yet you backed off because you find an alternate way to get things done. I think policy making is a lot about pragmatism and also maintaining that balance to some extent.
Can I give two rebuttals to wonderful points that Shamika brought in? Yes, the state has a monopoly of violence and only the state must. But to say that the state either the hands are tied or it's not capable of acting to control violence. I don't think that's true. I think it is sometimes the state, because of its own ulterior motives to placate vote banks, doesn't want to take action. So the 400 policemen that Shamika rightly talked of fell from the Red Fort when the farmers barged in and changed the flag. And most of the cases against them were taken back by the government to placate these farmers. And what I would say, many of them were Khalistani elements. So the state did that. On the other hand, when you had a potential for mass violence, which was the abrogation of 370 on 5th August, the state handled it magnificently. So when the state wants, the state can act. It is upon the state. The second point, Shamika, are you saying that we need to continue to grow more and more wheat and rice so that because we can't store it, let's give away 60 million of the extra produce as free, but let's not call it freebie? Yes, if you're saying let's do that, I'm fine by that. I'm honestly am. Although it's very troubling because economically there is another dimension to it that doesn't make sense at all. But more worryingly is the environmental cost. And I'll explain it to you how it's not just troubling to citizens economically, it's actually killing us. We don't even realize it. I'll explain to you how in under a minute. Leave aside the economics of growing 100 million tons more than what you can store or what you can want. That's another matter altogether. The point is we don't have enough water to grow wheat and rice to the extent to which we are growing, number one. And MSP has shown that if the government wants you to produce only 2 crops, you are going to produce only those 2 crops because it's like a sarkari job. The government is paying for it. You will keep on producing that. And as a result, what happened was that most of Punjab and Haryana started growing only rice. And they started depleting at an alarming rate the groundwater. So a law was brought in by Punjab government and Haryana government that you will only sow rice, the season of rice has to be delayed to be in concert with the monsoon. And what happened was when the rice paddy season was delayed, the harvesting season was also delayed, and it coincided with the onset of winter, which is right about now. And what is going to happen now is that every day 17,000 square kilometers of Punjab and Haryana farmland will be on fire every day for a month. An area the size of 12 Delhis is going to be on fire right next to Delhi. 35 million tons of stubble is going to be burnt. When you talk of forget about the environmental cost, it is going to produce 149 million tons of carbon dioxide. The total carbon dioxide production of all Indian transport is only 270 million tons. But the fact is the cost for treating respiratory diseases because of side stubble burning is going to be 150 times more than the cost that it requires to buy happy cedar machines so that not to burn the rice stubble. This is what I'm trying to say. So one thing has a cascading domino effect to completely not just destroy the economy, but destroy the health of the country as well.
Now, I want to just make one statement on MSP. Actually, I'm sorry.
I'm a layman, so
On MSP, there is something more happening, and I'm wearing a researcher hat. I do not, though I'm a full-time government employee, but I also have the freedom as a researcher to state this. MSP sets the price. It doesn't guarantee how much it's going to buy. If your country is now stopping to consume rice and wheat, it's a matter of time. You will have to stop. And on Himachal, there is a very nice natural experiment. Himachal is doing all of these things. Himachal and Uttarakhand had similar per capita GDP 20 years back. Guess now? It's a good natural experiment. They're all small states, border. Today, Uttarakhand is 3 times richer. 3 times per capita. So, it's like Punjab. Haryanvis are 1.5 times richer than Punjabis today. I think the outcome is there. People are realizing it, the pain is there. And eventually, I think Of course, policy making has to keep up with these tensions, but I think people are also beginning to see it. In fact, Punjab, Haryana, totally dehyphenated now. You cannot say Punjab, Haryana in the same breath. And, so, because things are happening on the ground.
Diagnosed as to what is the cause of the disease, and governments either at the center or in the states are least bothered. It's the same routine. The Supreme Court will say, oh, we will issue notices, we want to know why it hasn't happened, and then last time all the cases which were filed were withdrawn because we don't want to upset, quote unquote, our annadatas. They are mitsudatas, they are not annadatas over there.
No, I agree with you, Dada. In fact, to those of you who are interested in more research, we published a Lancet article on exactly this. How many deaths and what is the percentage GDP, because it's impacting your GDP. You might be growing more food today, but it's having a direct impact, and the biggest loss is in Delhi.
But to combat pollution in Delhi, they have banned firecrackers for Diwali. So.
No, I think looking in the rear view mirror of what has been, and we see the immediate impacts of what has been, there is also a requirement to look, what should be and what are the actions we take, both as at the center and at the state levels, to be able to combat the problems in a more sustainable manner, which is where the difficult questioning is and solutioning needs to be. There is a Western welfare model to the Scandinavian countries. Various variations of that as you come south down to France and others. Is there any direction that we look at from those angles as that to be a possible model to be able to address these issues, or are we looking at it very uniquely from our own way?
I think, we do have unique problems. We must appreciate that. We also want unique solutions. We cannot, this copy-paste is not going to work. So the whole idea around, the universal basic income, right? So, okay, it cannot be universal. Do we have direct benefit then? Well, in some form we do, right? We have a lot of DBTs. In fact, 56 ministries of the government of India is running some form of DBT or the other. Large part of it is facilitated because you have JAM. Everybody has Jandan, Aadhaar and mobile, which means the direct delivery of cash with minimal leakage is possible, and it's happening. The problem happens from the perspective of, think of now, neonatal mortality. Babies under 28 days when they are born and they pass away. How do you reduce something like that? And places like Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, UP, Jharkhand, very high. Now Rajasthan, not that much of an agricultural superstar, but MP and Bihar have done remarkably well in terms of food production. But how is the nutritional outcome not changing? Then you realize that the local capacity to procure and distribute, like even take-home ration to expectant mothers, or if high-risk pregnancy, we can identify, and then certain protocol has to set in so that we take care of these women for the 9 months and babies after that. Again, the state capacity is such an inherent, it's such a fundamental reason, and we think it's there. It's there and it's increasing because of digitization and maybe metrics of governance, etc. But it's not happening at the pace of which we want. So then a shortcut, Anand, many times is, well, why don't we give money to the mothers directly? That's what happened in Madhya Pradesh. Let's give 1,500 to all expectant mothers or women in a certain childbearing age. Or kuch nahi, to maybe the family will eat. Right? So she'll use it in a way that she sees fit, rather than the government and the inadequacy of that.
So that kind of becomes like a parent, right? A parent is somewhat, let's say, communist.
Nanny state.
You have to be in a nanny stage. You provide. You're looking for equal success of your children, and then you're ready to intervene if required. And I think there is a point where the child has to learn to walk on his own, and there is that handover.
Children are walking on their own. Don't live under an illusion. The bottom 20% again. The
It's
poorest
like
people.
a WWF thing.
Yeah.
I get
And
a heart
every-
attack with this. Please
And
revert
every
to the
time
bell.
she comes, it feels like
this
we
is
have to
really-
perform.
Yes, this is very scary.
Oh dear, I've lost my train of thought. You know, the whole idea is your bottom 20%, it's not just free things we're talking about. Your bottom 20%, 10 years back, 11, 12, 6% had some form of automobile, two-wheeler. You know, either a scooter and bike, etc. Today, you know what that number is? 40%. Your poorest 20% of the population, 40% of them have some form of, that is not a freebie. Well, of course, it may be channeled, etc., etc. But if you look at the number of hours worked, if you just look at the kind of movement and entrepreneurial sort of breakout you're having, you know, let's not live under illusion that 1.4 billion people are looking at the state. No, state is there. State is doing many things given its capacity, but citizens are pulling their weight, and I would say across the spectrum of wealth classes.
The children are walking. Let's take 5 minutes for questions. I'm sure there are many. We might be able to take 1 or 2 questions. We don't have that much time. The bell will ring. So you have. Just get the mic.
Is there any social auditing of MNREGA for its concrete achievements? Should it be continued?
We will accumulate 1 more question, and then we'll take them both together.
Maybe Shamika, Anand, any one of you can answer this question. Governments gives freebie or welfare schemes or whatever, and we as taxpayer honestly pay our taxes. But in this whole thing, in the implementation, somewhere commoners like us get into the grind. I'll give you an example what my question is. I come from Bangalore. They have a Groha Jyoti scheme where it is free electricity, you need to enroll for something. My average monthly electricity bill for staying 10 days at home or used to be 600, 700 bucks. Once Groha Jyoti came in, my bill started coming for 1300, 1400 bucks. One entire month I was not there, my bill was 1600. And it comes just like that. I thought, okay, my driver used to say he's getting, 14 rupees as his bill. I thought, okay, people are getting benefited from it, but I was continuously getting that bill. What is our mistake in your scheme implementation that we have to pay for the same utilization, we have to pay double or triple for that? And how do you address as policy makers those concerns? Thank you.
Shall I go for that? It's not your mistake. It's just that the state is using you as a tool to pay for welfare of the people who are the poorest of the poor. As I said, America has a debt of $35 trillion. They're just printing more and more money. It possibly 5 years down the line, it'll be $50 trillion. They don't care. We care because somebody's got to pay for it. And, you know, when people say proudly, look, 10 years ago, we had 350 startups. Today, we have 118,000 startups. Sooner or later, each one of those startups will have to pay taxes, you know. So, but as you say, and nobody should mind paying for the welfarism of the poorest of the poor. Nobody in their right mind would do it. What I mind is freebism. What I mind is state inaction on a gigantic scale. When the state is scared to take the right decisions, when it devastates us. For example, when Shamika and everyone else talks about agriculture, the fact is that 44% of our ready labor force of 600 million people is involved in agriculture. 44%. In the West, it is 2%. This kind of 250 million people involved in a sector that's contributing only 14.5% of the GDP is unsustainable. There is no flexibility. 82% of farmers and cropland is not insured. 110,000 farmers have committed suicide in the last 10 years. There is no water. So let's not go down that road. Problem is, are we kicking the can down the road? The answer is yes, we are.
NREGA social audit used to be much bigger issue 10 years back. But now with the digitization, you really have real time how many have sought and what is the cash outlay.
Any concrete achievements?
Oh, just remember, NREG is like workstation. You don't have anything else, so you can see the seasonality. When you don't have alternative job options, you go to NREGA sites because the job is not very easy. Right?
Can we take one question?
I have one question.
Actually, because then the next session we've already taken 15 minutes extra because of the break. So we're going to delay.
Gloria proposes, Gloria disposes.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anand and Shamika. Thank you very much.